Good evening, folks. We are going to convene the regular board meeting of the Marin Municipal Water District Board for the evening of April 18th. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, good evening. Director Jed Smith,
Here.
Vice President Ranjiv Kush,
Here.
Director Larry Russell, Director Matt Sampson,
Here.
and President Monty Schmidt.
Here. Okay, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Do we have any public comment only on item number 1, the closed session item?
There are none.
Okay. Then roll call on the agenda.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
and President Schmidt.
Aye. With that, we're going to move to a closed session, and we'll return at the regular session time at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we are reconvening here, and our closed session ended at 6:32 with no reportable actions. And so we're going to move forward with, do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda?
There are none. Oh, I'm sorry. A hand was raised, or two. We have a couple. The first two is 1402 and Mr. Clayton Smith. If they could just remember that they have 3 minutes to leave their comments, we'd appreciate it. So Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, Ms. 1402 and then Mr. Clayton Smith, I apologize. Go ahead, 1402.
James Holmes Larkspur. Unfortunately, I was unable to phone into last week's virtual recreation planning workshop because the meeting password was not published in the notices, though I very much appreciate the helpful efforts, albeit unsuccessful, of your public information officer, Tyler, to get it straightened out. But I'd like to tell this board what I wanted to tell and couldn't tell that meeting. It almost seems like the district's one hand doesn't know what its other hand is doing when the district conducts recreation meetings at the same time it's planning a gigantic rate increase that will cause hardship for many. Yes, of course, the staff can chew gum and walk at the same time, but these meetings are counterproductive. They just attract advocates from all over the Bay Area who push for expanded recreation, new forms of recreation, more trails, more privileges, more, all at district expense. Incidentally, the district's rate increase literature doesn't highlight expanded recreation as a reason for the increase. If the district is seriously considering the expanded recreation that the advocates seek, then that would be an unfair added burden on ratepayers and not candid about the reason for increasing rates. If, however, the district doesn't contemplate expanded recreation, and I think I recall hearing management say something like that at the Corte Madera rate workshop, though they can correct me, then the district is just needlessly raising Bay Area-wide public expectations and dreams and focusing on a low priority issue. Recreation should be a distant last priority behind providing reliable, safe water, expanding supply, maintaining infrastructure, and achieving financial stability, hopefully without putting ratepayers into the poorhouse. Please discontinue the recreation planning workshops while rate increases are being planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes and Mr. Clayton Smith.
Yeah, okay. This is interesting. It would follow on the last comment. I don't know if you people are familiar with a web site called the Marin Post. That is a production of Community Venture Partners, headquartered in Mill Valley by a person named Bob Silvestri. But there was a article today on their website concerning the consultancies and the consultant fees that are being generated by all the studies that you have been having going on here. In particular, the critique pointed out that his estimate was that the consultants are charging $300 an hour for their services. And I'd like to ask if you could actually explain how the fees for the consultants are arrived at. Is it an hourly fee? And is it $300 an hour? That seems to be the assertion in the critique, and it rather surprised me. Secondly, I recently ran across a speech given by the Brennan, who is the ex-director of the CIA, where he literally talked openly about the utilization of geoengineering to do weather modification, both for the purpose of controlling the amount of precipitation in any particular area, and also for what he was referring to as global dimming. And this confirms further for me, and along with the comments made recently by the president of Mexico, that he's forbidden this technology being implemented in Mexico, the global dimming technology, that in fact what we are witnessing here over the head of our county is this technology, global dimming, and perhaps it's also being a part and party to controlling the precipitation that we're receiving recently. At some point, I hope to bring this up and play it in front of your meeting, but it is a very insightful talk by Mr. Brennan on what they're doing here.
Thank you, sir. I have no further speakers.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. All right, we're on to directors and general managers announcements. I'll start to my left.
None.
I do have an announcement about the North Bay Watershed Association held a meeting on April 7th. And it was on a topic that's not really relevant to Marin water, which is groundwater basins, because we do not rely on groundwater. Nevertheless, I'm going to just give you a few points on this because I thought it was really interesting. There are about 515 groundwater basins in California. Jed's looking at his watch going, okay. There are 515 alluvial groundwater basins in California that make up 38% of the state's water supply. And in 2015, the state passed a Sustainable Groundwater Management Act called SGMA, and it applies to all high and medium priority basins. These are priorities based on levels of overexploitation. In the North Bay, we have 5 groundwater basins: Sonoma Valley, Napa Valley, Petaluma Valley, Santa Rosa, and Solano. These are high priority or medium priority, meaning they're under stress. And we heard reports from both Sonoma and Napa counties. In Sonoma, about 50% of their water supply comes from groundwater, and this is all for agricultural and rural residents. I was actually surprised to learn that in Sonoma County, the Russian River water system only supplies urban centers, something I didn't know. In Napa County, about 45% of the water supply comes from groundwater, but I was also surprised that 20% of their supply comes from the State Water Project, something I didn't realize. So I thought some interesting points. And then, interesting or important for us is that our former director, Jack Gibson, was elected as an honorary board member to the North Bay Watershed Association.
Yes, good evening. I have just 2 quick announcements. The first is I'm getting a lot of kudos from the public about the rate calculator that's been put online. So thank you very much for staff. And I think as we get through this process, it'll probably be a good idea to memorialize that on the website moving forward, especially with the rates over the next 4 years. So thank you for that. The second one, last Wednesday, I attended the Watershed Recreation Management Plan workshop, community workshop, and just wanted to acknowledge Sean Horn for his efforts to continually guide this process successfully. It continues to have quite a bit of public engagement. from very different priority groups. And so he's doing an incredible job moving forward. We look forward to the final report sometime late summer. But this process is going to need some public assistance. What I mean by that is the user groups, we really need, we're going to start talking about bringing everyone to the table to try to make some agreements so that we can have a successful plan moving forward. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
A brief item, some positive news. I understand that both Senators Padilla and Feinstein have submitted 1.5 million in appropriation by the Appropriation Committee for an earmark for $1.5 million for our Sulahuli electrification project. So there's more to come, and we need to get active because this will be coming through the WRDA program, which brings in the Army Corps. So we'll be engaging them and keeping the board apprised as that moves forward.
That's great news, Ben. Thank you. Any other board comments? Okay, moving on to our consent calendar. Can I get a motion to adopt our consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any public comment on our consent calendar?
There are none.
Okay, can we get a vote?
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
and President Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves us on to our regular calendar, item number 7, which is a resolution to approve purchasing valves and fittings from Core and Main Company for the Bontempi Treatment Plant Backwash Line Project. It's an approval item.
Yeah, good evening, Directors. Crystal Yasmin, Director of Engineering. I have Dion here tonight to present this item.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Dion Mokhtari, Assistant Engineer from the Design Section. I'd like to first thank the board members and the public for allotting this time for this line item regarding the procurement of materials for the Bontempi Treatment Plant Backwash Line Project. Just some quick history regarding the Bontempi Treatment Plant. It was built in 1956. The maximum production capacity is 20 million gallons per day. So the Bontempi Treatment Plant Backwash Line project is aimed to enhance the reliability of the backwash line by restoring and replacing seismic vulnerable sections. The backwash line is a crucial component of the backwash protocol at Bontempi, as it conveys water during the backwashing procedure. Backwashing is essentially for the treatment plant's filters, increases the longevity of the treatment plant's filters by eliminating accumulated debris and particles, and it is crucial for maintaining great quality water. The project's objective is to ensure that the backwash line operates seamlessly and is better equipped to handle any seismic activity in the future. The current valves at the Bontempi treatment plant no longer work properly, resulting in poor isolation in the system. Furthermore, seismic joints would provide the backwash line to be more seismically resilient. To ensure the success of this project, 3 new 24-inch butterfly valves and 2 new seismic isolation joints are required to be purchased. On March 21st, the district received 3 quotes for the request for quotes. The lowest responsive and responsible quote was submitted by Core and Main Company at the quoted amount of $163,282. The district has procured parts from Core and Main Company before. Staff is requesting the board authorize the general manager to execute the purchase requisition with Core and Main Company at the amount of $163,282. Thank you for your time and consideration. I yield this time to the board members for any comments, questions, or concerns regarding this.
All right, thank you. Any board comments? Questions? Okay. Can we get a, this is an approval item, so can we get a vote? Oh, sorry, public comment.
There are none.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, can we get a roll call vote?
I'm sorry, who moved and who
Oh,
seconded?
sorry.
So moved.
Second.
And now a vote.
Thank you. Director Smith.
Aye.
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
and President Schmidt.
Aye. Okay, that brings us on to item number 8, which is informational item on the Bolsa Redwood tank removal project.
Right, good evening, directors. And next up, we have Hagar, who will be presenting this item.
Okay, good evening, directors. My name is Hagar Nagash. I'm an assistant engineer and design. Today, I'm going to be presenting the Bolsa Redwood tank removal project. Marin Water System has 100 and
Didn't change up there.
there we go. It takes a
Oh,
little.
it's still late. Okay.
Okay. Marin Water System has 128 tanks in the system. We have 5 redwood tanks, 5 concrete, 117 steel tanks, and 1 plastic. In the last 10 years, we have removed about 32 redwood tanks. We have 5 remaining in our system. The 5 remaining tanks are Bolsa Tank, Hind Tank 1, Hind Tank 2, Madera Park Tank, Scenic Tank are the 5 remaining tanks. The known issues for redwood tanks are it has a high leak history, as seismic unreliability, and they're very hard to repair, and it has a high history of water quality issues. Bolsa Tank is a 200-gallon redwood tank. It was constructed in 1978, and it's about 45 years old. It is 18 foot high and a diameter of 45 feet. It provides service to 118 customers. The picture on the left shows a typical construction of a redwood tank, and the picture on the right shows Bolsa Tank. Okay. System modeling shows tank could be removed without affecting fire flow to our system. This will result in a new Eleanor Bolsa tank pressure zone. The picture, sorry about that. The picture on the right shows the existing and the proposed plans. The blue line that we see on top here is a 6-inch pipe that goes into the tank. The one that we see in green right here is a 10-inch that goes out of the tank and goes to Hillside Avenue. We're going to be installing a 6-inch welded steel pipe, which will connect the existing 6-inch welded steel pipe to the 10-inch pipe. And we're also going to be installing a new pressure regulator down on Hillside Avenue that would allow us to remove Bolsa Tank off the system. Project is going to be advertised on May 2nd, 2023. It's going to be awarded on June 6th. Construction will begin in July 2023, and construction will be completed on August 15, 2023. The engineer's estimate for this project is $137,000, and bids will open on May 16, 2023. In summary, combining pressure zones simplifies distribution system and reduces ongoing maintenance and costs associated with the tanks, and it will reduce system water loss that's caused by the leaking of the tank. The decommissioning of Bolsa Redwood Tank would leave us with 4 redwood tanks remaining in our system. With that, I open the floor for questions, if you have any questions.
Any board questions?
I just wanted to add that this removal of the tank is in line with, right, a strategy. A tank this size that feeds 180 customers just adds to our infrastructure burden and is in line with the discussions we've had with the board with this unique high infrastructure we have for a whole variety of reasons, right? Topography and the lack of density in our community. But the strategy, Crystal and her staff, of looking where we can eliminate some infrastructure and still provide or exceed the quality of service we're providing is just really the right direction. I wanted to reinforce, I don't know, everyone has heard that that's a key part in a continuing effort. So thank you both for moving there.
I have a question. Who gets the redwood?
The redwood, we're gonna probably, if we can sell it, we can sell it. But if not, then it's just gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah, normally we stockpile it at Pelican Yard and we use it for watershed projects to build footbridges throughout the watershed benches. You can actually see the steel banding marks on a lot of our footbridges throughout the watershed, and that's indicative that that wood came from a redwood tank.
It's great that we're recycling it. Other board comments?
I had the privilege to go with Crystal and Alex and visit this leaky tank, and it's one of a few, but I mean, it is shocking to see water pouring out of one of our storage tanks, and I'm appreciative that you guys are taking the effort to do this and switch it out. And like you said, Ben, we have many more tanks than almost all water districts of our kind, so this is one important step in the process. Very supportive.
Yeah.
But Hagar, thanks for the presentation. I'm a little confused though. Why is the tank no longer needed? Is it because we have other options for controlling pressure? Was that the main purpose of the tank?
The main purpose of the tank was storage and to regulate the pressure. Once we take that out, we have enough storage to service the 118 customers. So we don't no longer need the leaky Bolsa tank. And we are putting in a regulator, which is much cheaper than putting in another tank.
I would add that many parts of our service area were acquired over time, and there were a lot of small water districts that were incorporated into the larger Marin Water District. And we do have a larger tank higher up at a higher elevation. I believe it's a 1.5 million gallon tank, which is compared to a 200,000 gallon tank is quite a bit more storage. So we have enough storage for fire flow. And with some pressure regulators, we can get the pressure to the right level for this area.
That's great. Do we have a sense of how much it was leaking? Like, just out of curiosity.
I have photos.
It's
Too much. How about
too much,
that?
yes.
Okay.
It's a steady flow. It's not just a drip. It's a,
Gallons of it.
Good. I'm glad we're taking care of that. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things for you guys to know is that, in my opinion, one of the criticisms I've had of the district is that they have excess fresh finished water storage. There's about 4 days of finished water storage or some number of that type, which is about double normal. So, I think this is a wise move, especially from a maintenance standpoint. I think your explanation is an interesting one. I'm not so sure that's the real reason. I think it was more observationally. I've been working with the district since the 70s. I think it was more to do with a simple-minded approach. That if you put a tank at the top of the hill, you don't have to think. You don't have to have SCADA. You don't have to have controls. The tank takes care of itself, more or less. You lose power, you still have water. So I think that's kind of what I saw as the driving force in the way they arrived at the tanks. And much more important than having a lot of tanks, the hard part is you have a lot of pressure zones. That's a much more complicated problem to run a water system. The tanks have their own issues, but the difficulty from a management standpoint is when you have all these pressure zones and you have to have pumps that boost up to that pressure zone. So each tank has a pump system or something to that effect. So it just magnifies on itself. And like I say, my reading of it was kind of a simple-minded approach that, you don't have to think about that if you put it in. Now, why in the world they would put a 200,000 gallon tank for 180 people? I don't get that one. But that doesn't even start to make sense. Maybe there was planned development or something coming. But yeah, if you look at the district, if you haven't seen the schematic, you should get a copy of the schematic. It's pretty complicated. The physical, the drawing is disproportionately magnified in the vertical, or shrunk in the horizontal. So what you see is this kind of thing going up to the hills from the valleys. And it's an interesting drawing if you haven't looked at it. But it's a good thing. you've heard my talk about the saddle tanks. You know, that the problem I have with it is these were the decisions made by the district, which were always, in my opinion, kind of a poor mouth approach. You know, instead of making the good decision, these tanks, when was this tank built?
1978.
78, yeah. I mean, I don't think any other water district was putting in Redwood tanks that I'm aware of. It may be somebody like Boulder Creek or somebody in Santa Cruz Mountains, maybe. But no water district of this size or larger was putting in Redwood tanks in 1978. That's just astounding, very frankly.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, moving on to item number 9, which is Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act loan. This is another informational item.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take this one.
Okay, great.
Okay. So this is an informational item to get the board up to speed on where we are with this loan application. It's quite a saga. It began back in July of 2021, where we submitted a letter of interest to the EPA for a WIFIA loan for the Pine Mountain Tunnel tank replacement project. And a few months later, in October of 2021, we received a letter notifying us that it was accepted for submission for such a loan. And then in December of that same year, 2021, we brought the CEQA document to the board for the mitigated neg deck, and that was approved. Moving forward a little bit, we also went to the board, when was it, in April of 2022 to formally request applying for the loan. And so we had a resolution and the board approved it. This is before the changing of the guard with the board members. And so move forward a few months later, we had finished our hazard mitigation plan. It had been adopted by the board. And we decided to go ahead and try for a hazard mitigation grant for the project, which would cover the majority of the costs free of charge. So we submitted for that in the fall of that year, 2022. And now that brings us to February of this year. We received notification that Cal OES had not moved our grant forward to FEMA. So we were not able to get the Pine Mountain Tunnel hazard mitigation grant. So we're back to the WIFIA loan, which is a better interest rate than a bond would be. And so the next steps in applying for this loan is to submit the full application and also to negotiate terms and to show the feds that we are meeting NEPA standards, that we're going to have American iron and steel in the project, that we also meet some other requirements from the feds. And so once that's all approved, we can then officially execute the loan agreement. So what we're looking for is $10.8 million for the loan. We're thinking it's going to be at about a rate of 3.5%. The annual debt service payment on that would be $590,000, which would increase our annual debt service payments up to about 10.1 million a year, which doesn't materially change how much we'll be paying out on debt service payments each year. And then there's always a question about debt capacity. And so our board policy says that we can take out bonds and loans up to 4 times our operating budget, which puts us at about $368 million debt capacity. We currently have debt, though, of about $149 million on the books. So our remaining debt capacity is $219 million as of today. If we get this loan, that'll reduce down to $208 million of debt capacity. But with debt coverage payments over the next 3 to 4 years and inflationary costs of our operational budget, our debt capacity will actually increase. And we estimate that by the year 2027, we'll have a debt capacity of $330 million total available to us at that time. So with that, if we do get this loan, it'll free up some money to be able to move forward on some other projects that are priorities for us, namely that extra piece of pipe on the North Marin line from up to Smith Saddle that we just discovered was asbestos cement and not welded steel as we thought, where that slide is at Loma Alta. We'd also move forward on design for Ross Reservoir replacement. And then another project that we really want to get in, we like to get going sooner than later with this, with the available funds would be the San Anselmo Hub regulator. We have a big valve vault there that's, you know, they're going to be doing a huge construction project at the hub, the San Anselmo Hub, where all the roads come together. And so we've been meeting with the city and we do have a project there for a big valve project that we need to get going on. So with that, I'll see if the board has any questions regarding
if
the Whitfield loan.
If I could,
application.
Crystal, just add a little bit.
Yeah.
There was, a couple pieces to the presentation, the project, the debt capacity, and our finance directors here, if you have any more detailed questions on that. But also the, what that would free up. That last piece, this was just an indication of ideas tonight. By expressing those projects, we aren't saying that's what we'll be doing. That'll come back to the board and discuss relative priorities and some alternatives we have in staff's recommendations. So that last piece, I don't think we need to, if the board wanted to move forward with this loan, I don't think we need to dive too deep tonight because we will be bringing that piece back.
That's helpful, Ben. Thank
Thank
you. Board comments?
I have one. When was that line built? The one in the slide?
I want to say 1956, the North Marin line.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
the time when San Geronimo was being built. Yeah.
Yeah, because ACP, I don't think anybody put in ACP after maybe 1970,
Right.
maybe somewhere around there. So it's early enough. I'm just thinking about North Marin's thinking and the way they decided where to spend money. I'm also a little shocked they didn't know the materials of construction.
Oh, we had it in the as-built. It's just, it was incorrect on the GIS layer. And so we just discovered that when we were investigating for the slide. We actually just excavated the pipe to get the outer diameter in case we did need to replace it under emergency circumstances.
I think the clarification is it's the North Marin line distinguished from the North
Right.
Marin slide.
Yes.
Because we had two slides that have North Marin in them. She was referencing the North Marin line on the Alto slide, not the North Marin.
Right, yeah,
slide.
no, this is not the North Marin Aqueduct along 101. This is the North Marin line that goes from basically
Just a type.
Tocoloma in Nicasio all the way
Got
to
it.
Smith Saddle. Yeah,
How long is it?
6-7 miles.
So it was a poor choice by this water district, not by the other one.
Yeah. In 1956.
Yeah, but still, even cast iron would have been superior to that choice.
So you're looking, as I read this, for approval to borrow $10.1 million? Is it-
Well-
or recommendation?
No, actually, this is informational. The
Information only,
Your
but-
board
Yep.
did approve a resolution for staff to move forward on the loan application. It's
Got it.
really just informational because you were not part of that decision at that time.
You're just letting us know that is
Yeah.
that. And am I hearing you right that you're not sure exactly how that money is going to be spent?
No. The loan would go towards the Pine Mountain Tunnel tank replacement
And then what you're
project.
saying is there are potential
It
other,
would free up some, yeah.
The Pine Mountain project is currently in the CIP, not knowing where we'd get the grant or this loan. So it's funded in the CIP. So by moving forward with this WIFIA loan, it would free up those CIP dollars that will be coming back to the board. Certainly staff has some ideas on priorities, but we would discuss that with the board.
got it. And
Yeah.
and then I was a little confused about, you'd said it's 3.5%, $10.8 million, but then you said it's $500 and something thousand debt service, which is a lot more than 3.5%. So,
Yeah, the annual
there-
payment.
okay, so so it's not debt service, it's principal plus debt.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so-
fine.
so- Well, Brett can confirm
Yeah.
that, the 590,000 a year.
Yeah, no, she had it right. That's just the annual debt service on the 10 million. Okay. Yeah, so 580,000 is the annual debt service.
And how does that correlate to 3.5% of $10 million?
3.5% interest rate. at the interest rate we would get the treasury rate right now, so about
So is-
3.5%.
So isn't that 361?
You gotta
Over 30
Got to pay
years.
the principal.
Over
So
30
it's
years.
principal and debt
Yeah,
service.
yeah,
So
you're paying
it's
interest, just a lower
more
interest rate
than
than you
debt.
pay in the
Okay,
bond
thank
market,
you.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
And just confirming, Crystal, we've been discussing the Pine Mountain Tunnel Replacement Project at a number of meetings, and part of this is constructing the 2 new tanks.
Correct. It's
that-
2 million gallon concrete tanks that the construction project is, the first phase of the construction project has been awarded. And so construction will begin this summer. And as Ben pointed out, it's currently funded, cash funded through the CIP. Yes.
When will we know about the loan? When would that come through?
Well, the requirement to adhere to NEPA and all the different federal requirements is going to take some time. That's going to take a few months. So we'll actually be in construction already before we find out whether or not, until the loan is finalized. So, yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
This is the loan they were talking about when we were in DC. Right? They were talking about the WIFIA side of it.
Yeah, EPA was talking about WIFIA, the Corps was talking about WRDA, correct?
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Okay, moving on to the water supply shortage.
There aren't any comments on this either.
Okay, sorry. Thank you
Mhm.
much. Comments on that. Okay, then moving on to number 10, our water supply shortage and contingency level updates and informational item.
Small. We might need a bigger screen here if staff gets any older. I got it, Terry.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, Paul,
need-
but just
You need a
keep
younger,
keep those glasses up and everything looks better.
really does.
We're all smiling.
Good evening. Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. I have a short presentation on our water supply update and then maybe a brief discussion, hoping to get some clarity. Not that we don't have clarity, but even more so around water shortage levels and where are we? I think it'll be important for our public, our customers. So we'll hit these pretty quick. By now you're used to these and it's all good news on the water supply front. So I'm going to scoot through this a little bit quickly. Rainfall, we're just at about 72.7 inches or so for the water year so far. So well above average. I think in the last 25 years, we've had maybe 4 years that were wetter than this. So it's kind of interesting. The reservoirs are still full. Here we are almost approaching May and we've had certainly later years. 2019 comes to mind when we spilled, I think, in May of that year. But this is, very, very good water supply conditions for us, and we're not going to have any challenges, certainly this year, this next coming year. And our, as we look at our partners to the north, the North Marin Aqueduct that we were just talking about, right, that's been out of service due to the landslide for a few weeks now. And it's put us in a bit of a bind regarding the 5,300 acre feet minimum take or pay. We are working with Sonoma and we're expecting some letter from them around potential relief over taking this 5,300 acre feet by June 30th.
There's no condition in the contract that says they have to be able to deliver the water. I mean, it seems to be an obvious part of the contract if they can't meet their side.
I think it's a bit of a more complicated question than that. And it's not as clear as it could be, quite frankly. But we've looked at it and we think that there's actually a good, resolution without forcing the issue, contract or otherwise.
So fingers crossed, we'll bring that info to you regarding what Sonoma sent to us. Lake Sonoma, of course, continues to be fuller than full, I think was the characterization at the last WACTAC meeting. And so that continues. So water supply, great. Bless you. Looking at reservoir projections as we look forward in time through April of next year, average runoff rainfall, we're going to be in great shape spilling. And these storage projections do factor in the water that we
bring in is supplemental water from Sonoma. And so you can see the green dashed line. Oh, it's not,
Yeah, I can run it.
oh. Yeah, I'll be a little, maybe, I wonder why everyone's looking at me instead of the screen. It's sort of interesting. Technical difficulties. Should we start over? I'm on slide 6. Almost done, actually. That's right. So our green, next one, yeah. So the green dashed line represents our projection with average runoff and about 5,300 acre feet of water. And you can see that dashed purple line, even if we were to get to 75% of runoff with just 5,300 acre feet of purchase, we'd still be spilling next year. The 50% average runoff condition, that does represent a fairly severe year for us. So just to kind of put that in perspective, and the lines there in terms of storage levels represent the difference between taking 5,300 acre feet of supplemental water and 9,000 acre feet of supplemental water. Okay, so some recent activity from the governor's office regarding, statewide drought conditions. At the end of March, the state, or the governor, I suppose, sought to kind of ease drought restrictions, but kind of it stopped short of, declaring the end to the emergency. So no longer requiring or asking for this voluntary 15%, but yet still encouraging Californians to make conservation a way of life. And so also the requirement that water agencies be in their stage 2 to support that 15% request is no longer there. But at the same time, the state maintained the bans on certain wasteful water uses, such as irrigating non-functional turf and commercial properties. And there is still, in effect, this state of emergency around all 58 counties. According to the governor's office, it's to allow for drought response and recovery to continue. So how would we think about responding here at the district? Well, in April of 22, of course, our own water supply conditions allowed us to rescind the water shortage emergency. And at that time, we chose, to support, obviously, the governor's call for 15% voluntary water conservation. And in doing so, that meant we were in stage 2. Is even though we didn't have to take any particular special actions to achieve the 15%, obviously, if you're in stage 0, you're not calling for any conservation at all. And stage 1, you're calling for up to 10%. So stage 2, it's up to 20%. So that's sort of a de facto where we were. Given our water supply conditions continue to be favorable, and given the recent actions by the governor, it seems reasonable for us to think about communicating to the public that we are in sort of this normal year condition for water supply, or excuse me, what we call stage level 0 or shortage level 0. Around the Bay Area, this is just a smattering of the agencies. Our Sonoma Water, other contractors are all sort of rescinding their drought actions. East Bay Mud, and many of these had, drought rates in effect. So it was important for them to act early. Like East Bay Mud ended their 8% drought surcharge. And you can see here the other agencies included Contra Costa, Alameda, SFPUC, and of course, Valley Water.
Does it work?
Well, the rains have certainly helped them out, but I think, with Anderson down at, I think it's at 10% or something like that, that's a big hit for them. And that's
The
going to,
reservoir right along Highway 17 that you look down on as you're driving into San Jose.
that's going to go on for quite a while.
Yeah, like 5 or 10 more years. right?
Yeah, but their transfer market now will be a lot easier. So moving water through the South Bay Aqueduct will be a little easier this year, I imagine, than it has been in the last couple.
Did you see the article in the Chronicle about San Francisco's
No.
pipelines? They have these 4 lines that come across the valley, but they go into one tunnel. One tunnel goes into 4 lines. So we've been working for them to reline the inside of the pipelines.
So they've been addressing those over time, but now all of a sudden now this tunnel's an issue. And they're kind of in a rock and a hard spot. They thought they were run out of water last year.
Mm.
So it's kind of interesting. There's like a 3-page article in the Cron
We'll have to look at it.
about it. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, thanks. So, while water conditions do continue to be favorable for us, it doesn't mean that we want to stop paying attention to the efforts that we've, the gains that we've made over the past couple of years. So just a quick refresher for some of our customers around our conservation plan and, water savings incentives that we have around turf rebates, the Flume Smart Home monitor, where I think we're our rebates around $115. Turf conversion, it's $1.50 per square foot if you're just sort of doing the standard replacement. And if you go to the sustainable, it's up to $3. That's, sustainable mulching and natives. And then, pool covers, we're at $100 pool cover. Smart irrigation controllers, similarly around $100. We've got this gray water laundry to landscape program that goes through the Urban Farmer store. I think that's $125 per kit. And of course, rain barrels and cisterns at about 50 cents a gallon. And we'll be going through a lot of these programs in a little bit more detail on Friday. So if folks are interested in more information on our conservation plan, please tune in on Friday. But our plan is not limited to just incentives. We, of course, have policies and regulations around the use of water, landscape plan review, standards around fixtures for indoor. There's a gray water requirement that we have in our code. And of course, water waste prohibitions that are ongoing even in normal years. And irrigation limited to 2 days a week for overhead spray. And that paired on the state side with sort of the regulations around SB 606 and AB 1668 and the water use objectives around indoor residential, outdoor water use targets, commercial and industrial, and so on. And then sort of the third leg of conservation, right? We've covered incentives, regulations, but it's about more than that as well. It's about this education side. And we've got partnerships, outreach, and education where we're reaching into schools. We have a program with the College of Marin on Saturdays around gardening. There's Marin Master Gardeners, which is also a very popular program over the years. So lots of things going on in our conservation plan. Okay, so enough, I'll wrap up our next steps then. I think one of the upcoming board meetings, we propose to bring a resolution to the board, just again, seeking this clarity for our customers, downgrading from a shortage level 2 to a shortage level 0, reflecting the water supply conditions and the actions the governor has taken. And we're going to continue outreach to our customers, thanking them for the efforts and their participation over the past couple of years, and encouraging them to continue that going forward. And of course, we're always seeking more through our initiatives and incentives to encourage additional participation. And we'll be continuing to monitor our water supply conditions, of course, as we move forward.
Just to add that first bullet, when we had the rains come and we were essentially full, we maintained the level 2 shortage to be in line with the governor's action. So that's why the timing is now following the governor's action again, which is consistent with what we're seeing with other Bay Area water agencies.
Board comments?
Paul, thank you as always. And I think this is a good opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of our customers to meet those 15% or exceed that conservation level as directed by the governor. Maybe you'll be able to help us, but I think the state's average was substantially lower than what we did here against that voluntary rate. So I think Marin was much higher than that. And I'm not sure if you have that number statewide average.
I don't have the statewide average, but you're right. We were higher than the state average.
Which is a good point to acknowledge. And then the second part, following the general manager's report over the past few board meetings, it seems like there's a substantial decrease in rebate outages for what we're offering for conservation. It seems like it's dropped off considerably since last year. And I'm looking forward to the report on Friday, but maybe we can understand a little bit why or some of the strategies we're looking at to make sure we get that back out in front of the public, because it's really difficult when it's raining quite a bit to think of a flume on your house. And so but it's important to plan now for who knows what next year is going to bring. So we can look at that as well, especially when we're going to have a substantial pot of money to fund a lot of this stuff. We need to make sure people, one, are going to be accepting of it, and two, know of it. So.
Yeah, I believe Carrie and Adrian have been working behind the scenes, coming up with the strategies around driving those incentive programs to our customers. Yeah.
Ranjit?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Paul, behavior change is a long-term process, right? So going back and forth between these sort of voluntary, these shortage levels, it clearly confuses customers, and it reduces the effectiveness of our behavior change messaging. Now, if we had drought surcharges in place, we may be looking at this very differently. But in the absence of those drought surcharges, what are the benefits for removing the current shortage level designation for us?
I think most obviously it aligns us with the rest of the water agencies, excuse me, and the water supply conditions that we have currently. But it's really, if you think about the next shortage that comes along, we need to be able to ask our customers, or may need to be able to ask our customers, to clearly contribute above and beyond what they do on a daily sort of routine basis. And one of the ways that we communicate that are the shortage levels. So if we were to remain in this shortage level 2 condition, everyone would, I think, to your point, maybe become numb to it, and it would be difficult for us to ask for more at that
Yeah,
point.
so it's the crying wolf concern.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that we send mixed messages to our customers when we say it's important, we have these voluntary conservation requirements that we should all strive for. And then we say, well, it's no longer a problem. I'm not sure we're going to resolve that now, but just something to keep in mind as we consider our communication strategy around conservation. This behavior change issue that we're trying to achieve is really a tough one.
Well, one perhaps consideration is we can be thoughtful in how big of a splash we make were we to go from 2 to 0. Meaning it doesn't have to be, go back to your old patterns, we're down. I don't even know it warrants necessarily a splash at all, but it does provide us, in addition to what Paul was saying, right? And the tool for the next shortage to go into 1, then to go into 2, and have that progressive messaging. So it does feel operationally important.
I think it's also just, we have those shortage levels because they're triggered by specific things. And that way it's not arbitrary. I mean, when we ask people to cut back, people are like, why? What's your basis for doing that? Having those makes it clear and straightforward and not arbitrary. It's not a political decision. It's not guessing what's going to happen. It's based on our experience. We modified them based on our most recent experience and recognizing that they, frankly, our levels weren't aggressive enough to help us out. I think it's also really important. This messaging around where we are at. I think it's a struggle across the entire West or California, much broader than our problem, but it's the same one, which is, yes, it's wet, undeniably, and our reservoirs are full. Fantastic. But we've been here year after year. We've had full reservoirs, and then within years, we are down to a situation that's quite dire. And so I think it's really, it is a really important challenge for us to send the right message to people where we are straightforward with, we are full reservoirs. That's worthy of celebration. But at the same time, conservation is still really important. It helps keep our demand down. That helps us reduce the need to construct more projects or to secure more water, which costs money. It also saves people money if they don't use water, even in a wet year. If you don't use water, that helps keep your bill down. So I'm sure, Adrian, you've got all sorts of great messaging points for us. But I think that would actually be maybe at one of our subsequent meetings. It'd be great to have some of that presentation because the public does tune into our board meetings, and it's just another way to help get that out.
President Schmidt, I think it's an important point you make, because there's another perspective here besides the conservation piece for water supply. It's the folks that we're all going to be experiencing potentially a rate hike here in a little bit. And if we can provide the public with the ability to save water for the ones that are motivated to do so and to get that out in front, I think it's very important for those customers as well.
Well, I think it's just, welcome to a Mediterranean climate. I mean, this is just what semi-arid places do. And Monty's right. I mean, if you remember the 76 drought, they said that it would take 30 years to fill up Shasta. It filled up in a year and a half. This year, Shasta 75% full already. And one of our guys was up at Gold Run today, and it was snowing at Gold Run, even though it was clear here. So the weather is interesting in the mountains. And, I don't know what they're going to do with the snow runoff. It's going to be quite interesting to see how they manage it. In the Rotary meeting, you mentioned one of the commentator or director of the group said that she was questioning the flood in Sacramento. And I don't know how many you know about that. In about 1865 or 64, it was 30 feet deep in downtown Sacramento. And the valley slopes 1 foot per mile. So it was flooded 30 miles either side of Sacramento. That had to do with the gold mining from the hydraulic mining. They had washed all the fines into the river. Then came the spring runoff. Runoff had nowhere to go, made its own yellow bypass, and just put Sacramento 30 feet underwater. And it was quite a big deal. And she was questioning it. She was questioning it in a funny sense, I thought. She was questioning it in terms of what she called an arc storm, which I presume relates to Noah. The only thing I could figure out, I'd never heard the term before, but she was questioning what our preparedness was for arc storms, which I explained, I think, fairly well to her that, you do the best you can do. Our reservoirs do play a flood control role, but they're not particularly solely for flood control. So, I thought the one thing you guys would pick up on, which caught me a little shocking, was your slide with the 5.3 thousand million, 1,000 acre feet, that it's going to go right over the dam, huh? So that's, if we get a normal situation, bring 5.3 in, part of it's going out, not that water, but other water over the dam, which basically is the same thing as throwing that water away, buying it and throwing it away.
Right.
At 5.5 million or something like that. A little more, I guess now it's more like 6, huh?
Yeah.
We've talked in the past about options of what we can do to, and I'd love to, and maybe this is a good diversion here, is to ask if we don't take that water, if we take the water, it's going to spill. And so is there even a cost savings of just not taking it so that there's not the energy of pumping? I don't know if maybe that's a very small portion of what the cost would be. I know we basically have to buy it. It's take or pay. I get the principle, but do we have any cost savings, just even energy wise, of just not moving it, just to spill it?
It would be very, very small, if any at all, because if you're not pumping from the Ignacio treatment plant into the system, you're moving water from San Geronimo, which is up over the ridge and into, so probably.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
I mean, that's, just discussion here. And now my impression would be.
And we don't know it'll be an average or more year. And once you find out if it's not, you've lost ground by not taking it. So we're going to have more of these discussions with the board, but it is a balance of, being prudent given the uncertainty of what it's going to bring. I think this will be a year likely that staff won't be recommending augmenting the minimum.
That seems reasonable. And I was more just thinking of this year where it's very clear we're going to have plenty of water, and that any water we would take between now and June would spill. But we've also talked about whether there's some way to work with Sonoma to hold that water, store it, and we have some sort of terms of loss that if we don't take that 5,300 acre feet, it stays, but it's spill, terms and conditions that it spills first or whatever in their storage, some sort of loss factor over time. But
I mean, we don't have anything like that in the contract now.
Yeah.
There's nothing prohibiting them from being magnanimous, of course, and that's what we're currently engaged with them on. And they are, we need to wait and see what they're going to send us. They'll be sending us a letter. I don't know what that's going to say, but hopefully it will provide us some means to defer delivery while perhaps we make payment as scheduled, but defer that delivery somewhat. So at least it's not.
I think that
coming
would be
to us
great
right-
progress
right,
to
yeah.
see a different pathway, that maybe
Right.
some years we might look at a different option, which is might be to leave it there under some sort of terms, because it's a different play on statistically, are we likely to spill it here versus leave it there, but take a loss as it sits over time.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other board comments?
Understand though, that they may be in a situation where they have to spill it.
Right.
So they only have,
Yeah.
this Spiro thing only gives you a little bit of a jump. You still got the problem of how much, the basic issue is the same, which is when do you let the water go? That's a really difficult part of flood management because you're just guessing. And, I think, Ben, that what I heard, if I heard it right, was that at 3/4 of a normal year, we're still going to spill. Unless I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just a shout out, kudos to the Ben, the leadership team, the previous board for getting us through a historic drought. Like this was, I don't know if it was 1,000-year drought, but our county and our customers should be thankful and grateful that we didn't run out of water, that we busted our butts to make sure that we wouldn't, that our people stepped up and conserved. And although I'm sure all of you guys got the same messages from my friends, like, hey, you're all set now, it rained, no big whoop, it's like, yeah, it's a big whoop. Yes, we got a short-term reprieve. Without a doubt, we're not done. I would communicate to our customers that all the conservation ideas that they have been engaged in should continue, if not stronger than ever now. That the turf conversion is probably the best thing that we can do. Plant native species, pollinators, be thoughtful about how you waste and use your water. I don't see any rain in the next 10 days. I would assume there's going to be no more. And so we should conserve as aggressively as we ever have. And if you do, you're going to spend less money. You're going to waste less water, and it'll serve the public well. So good job, team. Good job, leadership team. Good job, previous board, for getting us through it. And I would say we all should have that attitude that we're still in a crisis, because it sure looks like that's going to be our modus operandi for the next decades.
Just one more comment and question, Paul, about non-functional turf. So ban on irrigating non-functional turf is still in place?
Yes.
Commercial.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting point, where even in the current conditions, that's still going forward. I think that, I think it's one of the concerns I have, and particularly why I think keeping up this message about conservation is important, is that a lot of people might be looking to replant their lawns, functional and non-functional. And I would love for people not to do that. I would really like, especially the non-functional turf, to not consider it. And I think, food for thought at some point is whether we should just consider making non-functional turf, commercial non-functional turf, ban permanent as a way of just saying, don't bother, because when we get into another dry year, it'll be yet another thing that'll probably quickly come back onto a conservation list, and taking turf in and out, I think is a waste of time and money. So it might be worthy of recognizing that might be here to stay.
We can certainly look at that for you. I would, the board already has, I think, taken action and a resolution on no new non-functional turf.
Permanent.
Right, for commercial, I believe. So, it's sort of an incremental step that you're describing to broaden that.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments? Okay, any public comments?
Yes, there are two, Mr. Phil Sauter and then Clayton Smith.
A few months ago, I recalled Director Smith saying that the water district isn't an ordinary business. I realized that he didn't mean that the district doesn't follow business-like practices, but rather that it provides its customers with more than a water for money experience. Watching the recent rate-setting process, it's clear that the district does follow a very business-like approach to ensure its ability to provide reliable, high-quality product. The district clearly strives to operate in a business-like fashion. The exception seems to be the approach to conservation as a source of water supply. It seems that we're practicing an aspirational, almost passive form of conservation. We set a budget, we offer programs, we hope they work. I've heard some say that they don't consider conservation efforts to be predictable or reliable. So I'd like to recommend that we bring conservation into the fold of a managed source of water supply, just as we'd manage a desal plant or a new reservoir or a purchase contract with Sonoma Water. Specifically, I'd like to recommend that we set goals for water conservation. Some that don't require us to wait until 2040 to let folks gradually save 4 million gallons of potable water a day. I'll suggest that we set a more aggressive timetable and try to motivate our customers to save 4 million gallons a day within 4 years. That would mean providing budgets and programs that would make folks want to reduce potable water use by 20 gallons per capita per day, primarily by reducing use of potable water outdoors. That would extend our existing water supply by 5 months. Notice that I've used numbers here, 4 million gallons a day, which equates to 4.5 acre feet, which equates to 20 gallons per day, which equates to a 5-month increase in water supply. If we don't understand here in this room numerically, specifically what we want our customers to do, there's no way we're going to communicate to them what we want them to do. So I'm saying we get way more business-like and set some actual numerical financial goals. This isn't a pipe dream. I've got a list of water districts throughout California who have done this. We've had 2 conservation consultants tell us that there's much more we can do. And we have a group of citizens and customers who are willing to work with the district to help do it. I hope you'll take us up on it and make this a far more quantitative rather than a qualitative approach to conservation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clayton Smith and then Miss Marilyn Price. Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, the 1863 event that was earlier being referred to, it actually, according to Lynn Ingram, a paleoclimatologist who I met and got to feature at a meeting in Marin some years ago, she has done a writing up of that in her book, The West Without Water. And that was an event where it rained for 42 days constantly. It was truly like Noah's flood. It turned the Central Valley into a lake, and it took several weeks to drain out the Golden Gate, and it cost, I think there were tens of thousands of homes, and I think 100,000 cattle died in that flood. And so that's what that was. And so, yes, we do have a temperamental village that we live in here as far as the climate is concerned. That's one of the reasons that Indians who lived here, the Native Americans, excuse me, they eschewed building large permanent settlements because of the issue around water. Concerning that overabundance coming from Sonoma, that is a perfect argument that what we need is we need more storage. It's a clear case being made there. And to think that they, if you think of them as a business, they're counting on that money that they get from us to meet their budgets. So why would they decline sending up? Why would they decline the money? We're going to have to pay it anyways because it's part of their long-term budgets. They have probably have placed that somewhere in their financial considerations in terms of taking care of their capital needs up there for the Lake Sonoma itself. And so I think that's a kind of empty road to go down. And I think we should begin looking at getting that extra reservoir storage built ASAP rather than letting it all run down the creek. I mean, this is really such simple decision thinking. I'm almost stunned that it is not the first consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Miss Marilyn Price.
Yeah, hi, and I will be very brief. I want to thank Phil for his thoughtful comment, which seems like a suggestion maybe to look into, but and also to thank Jed for his continuing to emphasize conservation, which is the main thing I concentrate on. I know recently we've got more water and my grandson lives here, and so I'm noticing that they're taking longer showers. So I said to him, and I wanted to be very careful with this the other day, are you still having short showers? And he kind of didn't say very much. And then what can I say to him? And what I proposed was, water is also energy. It takes energy to bring that water into our home. And from what I understand in the state of California, it's a lot of energy, a big percentage. So I'm wondering if in, trying to encourage making conservation a way of life, which was one of your items, and the behavior change that you are talking about, if finding these ways that, without the regulations, which we will probably need to, but that we have these very creative things that we can convince people. It's not just conservation is a way of life. And, the other factors, the energy factor, it's not just water, which is so precious, but that we're saving energy and all the ramifications of that we kind of let our residents know that kind of thing too.
Thank you. I have no further speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, that takes us to item number 11, future meeting schedule and agenda items.
Thank you. Good evening. So I would like to kindly remind the board that there are several internal meetings coming up, which is the first one is this Friday. The Operations Committee is at 9:30 a.m. Then April 27th, next week, is the Thursday Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Then on Tuesday, May 2nd, which is almost around the corner, is the Board of Directors regular bi-monthly meeting, and that will also be followed with the budget study session. So then going to external meetings, on April 20th, the Tamales Bay Foundation monthly board meeting, I believe, is at 3 p.m., both Zoom and at the Iverness Library. On Monday, May 1st is the Sonoma, the Sonoma WACTAC at 9 a.m. And then Friday, May 5th is another North Bay Watershed Association meeting. And I think that may be a field trip, but I need more information on that. And I'll get that to you as soon as I can.
Terry, I just wanted to add some color here. This Friday, the Operations Committee, there's a very robust presentation that's going to be doing a deeper dive than we've gotten to. You know, it's a process here in terms of the roadmap implementation and the status of the projects and the finances and the schedule. So I'm looking forward to that, and I understand there's interest. So I just wanted to flag that, as well as the Tuesday, May 2nd board meeting, which is a very important meeting, and that we're going to be going through the budget and, you know, in some detail, both from a public facing standpoint, what the public's getting for their money generally, in addition to the rate increase that we've been talking about, and going through that in detail, as well as granular analysis of the budget and how to look at it and what it means. And actually been working with the chair of the finance committee, Jed, in that as we're putting that together to ensure we're hitting at least the best we can the interests of the board, that, you know, will then flow into the upcoming rate hearing.
There's a meeting of the NBWRA on the 24th
Oh,
also.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we are going to now move back to closed session.
Do we have any public comment, Terry?
There are none on the closed session coming up.
Okay, the board of directors reconvened at closed session ended at 8:57, and there were no reportable actions, and we are now adjourned.
Thank you.